Good afternoon, everyone. This is Alicia Sacra with the Local Streets and Roads program here at the California Transportation Commission. I am the program manager. I'm joined today with Celeste and Leanne, our program analysts with the Local Streets and Roads program. They are here to help field questions in the chat, the Q&A. You can raise your hand if you would like to ask a question via the phone, the computer, not a problem. We will have breaks throughout the training material where we can stop for Q&A. And I just want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day and in your afternoon to join us. And I will ask for your understanding as I am currently not at my top form with a nice little cough and keep losing my voice. So we will try and trudge through this to the best of our ability. So getting straight in to today's presentation, we will go over the technical training objectives. We will discuss the reporting schedule, what that entails, the overview of the program, preparation for reporting, the detail that's going to be required. We will do a CalSmart Live demonstration, get through just navigating the basics of CalSmart. Then we'll go into our frequently asked questions and resources. And just like we do in every session that we have, we are here to answer as many of your questions as we can. If they become too specific, we may have to redirect you into sending us an email and discussing at a later date. But we do our best to answer as much as we can during the training. So the annual expenditure report program schedule, as many of you may remember, and some of you may be new, we permanently set the reporting schedule to be December 1st of each year. And this is a direct result of our jurisdictional and stakeholder input and request of what worked best for them. So we listened, and that's what we adopted. This does align directly with the annual Streets and Roads report that is collected by the State Controller's Office each year. This is why we say work directly with your finance teams as you're preparing this report, because the numbers that you report to us as being spent for the program should align with the same numbers that you are providing to the State Controller's Office that is specific to this funding source. Unlike with us, you're only reporting RMRA to us, the program source funds. To the State Controller's Office, you're reporting all funds that are being used in public works needs and in streets and roads needs. They're just very different reports, but certain things we do believe should align. Something I really want to stress with everyone is that, number one, the system is always open by mid-October for reporting. So we announced that we had it open. So it is currently open for you to start your reporting process. You always have at minimum 6 weeks to report in the system. It is going to be due on December 1st. The thing that I want to stress to everyone about accuracy, continuity in our reporting and our proposed project lists. Some of you may have noticed or seen an announcement that the Local Streets and Roads program was chosen by the legislative committee to have a state audit conducted on it. So we've actually been dealing with an audit on the program since June. And I've got to say, it has been imperative that there's been accuracy, continuity, that we are the gaps and information is being filled in where possible within the reports that are provided to us as we've gone through this audit process. It's been critical for us. And so we want to really encourage you to make sure that you're continuing to do that. This is all self-reported data. We do not have ways to verify or validate your information. So it is critical that you do these things. SB1 funds are still very contentious, and people look at them and investigate them under a microscope. And so you have to expect that the same is going to be done with the reports and project lists that are proposed each year under this program. So here's our overview of the program. This is pretty basic. It's going to be repetitive information. In order to receive funds each year, you have to submit a list of proposed projects that have been adopted via resolution. There is a set time frame in which that should happen. We just adopted the last 13 for subsequent eligibility for the 23-24 year at our October commission meeting. So as of this month, everyone will start receiving their funds if they had not already started receiving them in monthly disbursements. Pursuant to Streets and Highways Code Section 2034B, for each fiscal year in which an apportionment is received, RMRA funds are received, cities and counties must report to the commission all RMRA funds that are spent and provide updates on the projects that were proposed and intended to be funded with these source funds. So what does that mean? If you're receiving money, which you all are, 100% eligibility has been achieved each year for since 2018. So you should all be reporting every year, regardless as to what you're spending and what's going on in your district. You still are required to provide a report, right? Things to help you for preparing your report. And this is more of like a best practices. You want to verify and identify that all reportable project expenditure related data and statuses are selected are based on the project activity recorded within the reporting fiscal year. And we'll get into that a little bit more about what we mean by selected. But what we're essentially saying is that you're accurately tracking. I am so sorry. I know that there is a truck and a loud beeping noise, and I'm sure you're all hearing it, and I do apologize for that right now. But we want to make sure that you're capturing any and all activity that occurs within the reporting fiscal year. So that is July 1 to June 30th each year. That includes invoiceable work that incurred cost. So if there was work that ended up by being invoiced, the invoice didn't come through until August, you didn't pay it till September, you're still going to report out on that invoiceable work and the funds that were spent, if that invoiceable work was all the way up through and into that current fiscal year that is being reported on. You're going to record any project list, scope, location, or schedule changes that were made throughout the reporting fiscal year. In other words, if there was a change to the project list resolution detail that was adopted at that time, so in this case for 22-23, you need to make sure that you've updated that information accurately and in the expenditure report as applicable. For your annual reporting detail jurisdictions, you need to be able to report the following information. This is any local streets and roads program RMRA funds spent in the reporting year. I know this is repetitive from the last slide. I get it, but it needs to be said again and again and again because this is a constant issue that we have to fight throughout the reporting process. If a jurisdiction has unspent RMRA funds by June 30th, which means if you are all done spending your funds, you've received all your invoiceable work through June 30th, and you're done paying, nothing else is coming out, you need to indicate the jurisdiction's intent for those funds in the coming fiscal years. That means that you're identifying within a project list that shows up in there, when is that next project expected to actually start taking place and incurring cost? You have a summary field that you can fill in on the intake form where you could give us that insight. We give you opportunities to do so. This is really important, especially for our smaller and more rural counties and cities where maybe funds aren't being spent every year and you're having to reserve your funds and roll them over from year to year. Explain to us that and why in your intake form, and it'll help. And it's called a summary box that we ask you to fill in. This will greatly help fill in the gap and tell the story that the numbers don't tell us. So using the CalSmart system, you really want to capture your following details. You're identifying your projects that were reported in the prior fiscal year. So when we say reported in the prior fiscal year, that's your expenditure report detail from the prior year, and then relisted in the reporting fiscal year. So prior fiscal year reportable project list, it can all be found in CalSmart, and then your current fiscal year list of projects that were proposed for funding in CalSmart. You need to report on all newly proposed projects from the reporting fiscal year project list. And you also need to make sure that you are accounting for any remaining RMRA funds for the prior year that were spent in the current fiscal year. So what this means is if you had any carryover funds from 21-22 that were then spent in 22-23, you still need to report those funds. For some reason, there are some jurisdictions that have the misunderstanding that if you didn't spend them in that year, they're now a free-for-all fund and you can use them on whatever else you want. That is not the case. You still need to be accounting for that fund. Funds spent from the RMRA apportionment received in the reporting fiscal year. This means that you need to be identifying to us exactly how much was dispersed to you. And it is important that that is accurate. You're going to see that we refer to this as the funding amount that was dispersed from September to August. And you're going to say, Alicia, but September to August is not the fiscal year. That doesn't work because that's, July 1 to June is the fiscal year. We understand that, but these are what you're dispersed is based on revenues that are received and accrued throughout that month in the fiscal year. It takes about anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks for that to be collected, rectified, and then distributed. And so that's why you see a lag time, right? So just know that your eligible RMRA that you receive comes to you from September to August each year, but it is considered that fiscal year's funding source. Expenditure activity summary. I've already mentioned this. This is what I'm saying and what I refer to when I say it's a brief summary that needs to be provided. This will really help explain what did or did not happen in your jurisdiction. And I cannot tell you enough how much we've actually relied on this to help create the narrative in our annual reports to the legislature, as well as during this audit process. All projects proposed in the reporting fiscal year need to be accounted for in the report. All previously reported projects not yet completed need to be accounted for in the report. So basically, if it's in there, it needs to be accounted for one way or the other, right? You see it, it's in there, it still has to be accounted for. If a project became active within the reporting year in which RMRA funds were spent but had not been previously reported on nor proposed in the reporting fiscal year, this is where you will be adding this to your expenditure report. And we will identify how that is done. And I cannot stress this enough. Do not add a project to your expenditure report unless it was active in the reporting fiscal year. If you do this, if you add a project that was not active in the reporting fiscal year, and what we commonly see happen is that people add in the projects that were proposed for the current fiscal year we're in, not the current fiscal year that they're reporting on, right? So they'll be adding them in because, oh no, those projects didn't show up. So then they add them in. You've just created erroneous duplicate reporting. It's going to mess up your numbers. It is also going to cause you a headache in the long run and a lot more work for you. So if it's not necessary, don't add it. Identify project activity that occurred within invoiceable work that occurred during the fiscal year. So where costs were incurred. Record the reporting fiscal year apportionment. So we'll go through that and how you'll find it. This is the status terminology that we refer to. So a completed project, a project that was completed with like construction, major work open to the public, right, by June 30th. And this does not include final closeout because we know that final closeout, punch list items, things like that, that can take anywhere from like 3 to 6 months after, in some cases, even a year. after a project is technically completed and open to the public. So don't worry about that. We've already had that written into statute. In our guidelines, you're allowed to call a project complete if essentially it is functioning and open to the public. In progress report or in progress project as a status. This just essentially means that the project was active within the fiscal year, but did not complete by June 30th, right? And then carried over is just the project was not active whatsoever within the fiscal year, but it is intended to start in the next year. Forecasted. And the reason why we have a difference between carried over and forecasted is in the first couple of years of this program, we were getting 5-10-year capital improvement plan, maintenance plan project lists that were coming through. And there was a big misconception that all these projects were immediate to be done. And that's not the case. And so it's really important to us that there is a differentiation that is made between carried over and forecasted. Forecasted means that it'll take place. It's not active in the current year. It will not be active in the upcoming fiscal year. It may be 2 or more fiscal years out, right? So like the next fiscal year isn't when it's going to start. It's at least 1 or more than that out. And so that's when you're going to call it a future forecasted project. Carried over just means that it'll start in the next fiscal year. No longer RMRA funded. These are projects just for whatever reason are no longer going to be considered RMRA funded. You either found other sources, it's being scrapped with no ETA of when it'll be added back into to your list of priorities. There's things of that nature that occur. And so we want to make sure that that's also being captured. And I cannot stress this enough. If a project that is on your list is no longer receiving RMRA funds, but it is being delivered and the project is completed, do not report out on it as complete. Do not report out on it as though it was a project that was delivered under this program. You are only providing statuses for projects that are actually going to be using RMRA funds. If it does not use RMRA funds and it was delivered, you need to remove it as no longer RMRA funded, because that will actually cause the integrity of our project list, of our reports to be called into question, because you're not actually delivering a project with that fund. Expenditure-based project activity, and I'm just going to go through like 1, maybe 2 of these. It's really self-explanatory. The project was active between July 1 and June 30th of the fiscal year, but it wasn't completed. The project incurred costs within the fiscal year that were to be paid with the RMRA funds. The project was invoiced for work that occurred within the fiscal year, but let's say the funds weren't actually paid until after the fiscal year had already closed. This is the expenditure detail that you're actually capturing. Your project status is going to equal in progress. The project start is somewhere within that fiscal year. Your estimated completion schedule has to be after July 1 or after of that reporting fiscal year. And then, I'm sorry, at the close of that fiscal year. And then estimated completion schedule, where is that? What is that, right? Estimated total cost is all funding sources. So regardless as to whether or not it's receiving just RMRA, if there's another local measure, state fund, federal fund, whatever it is, you want to identify what the total funding amount is of that project, because this helps put us into perspective. What is the large scale of the project that's being delivered? And I think that this is a big issue that we see because it creates a misconception of the cost of these projects. If you're only reporting as the total project cost, the same amount that you used of your RMRA, for instance, we have some agencies that said that they spent $4,500 on a completed construction project using RMRA funds. And this project had like 30 road segments in it. And they say the total project cost was $4,500. There's no way that we are delivering 30 segments of project, paving, overlay, whatever it was, for $4,500. $4,500 of RMRA funds were contributed to this project that probably cost $2 to $3 million. That's what needs to be captured. the RMRA funds expended that were based on the actual invoice work during that fiscal year. And then future fiscal year RMRA funds. This is, I kind of wish I had an asterisk on here, or I just deleted this part. It's good for you to track internally if you've already dedicated future fiscal year funds and if you've advanced a project using future fiscal year funds. What becomes a problem is when you put it into the system, it can cause you issues or the next person who's reporting issues when they're looking at it, they think it's already been captured. What happens is it doesn't actually pull it from your total amount spent. We don't track it like that. It's just in there as a guide for you to be able to follow to say, oh yeah, we already, yep, we did say that we were going to do this and I got to remember to enter that amount in the following year once we get those funds in for reimbursement, whatever it is. Just be careful about doing it. I do caution you about it. Complete, you're reporting your project as complete, like I said, and you're reporting as using funds that occurred, final payment using RMRA funds occurred. So basically what this is like, let's say that a project was completed last year and you reported it as completed last fiscal year. And this year it's going to show up again. And you want to add the final closeout amount that also included RMRA funds, or maybe it didn't include RMRA funds. Either way, you're adding to the final closeout amount of the project. That's when you add to a completed project. That's when you report again on a completed project. If you're not adding funds to that in any way, shape, or form, do not report again on a completed project. And then I'm going to jump to required reporting detail, project specific information. So again, project title. I cannot stress this enough when it comes to the project title. Try to keep it as consistent as possible. You're going to see in there that there's a section that says like project ID. It's a unique ID that you can create in the system for your project that you're reporting on. I strongly encourage you to do that if you have like an internal coding system or something, and to put that in there, because this will help your other team members who are reporting or yourself to remember and track what it is that you guys have now dubbed this project, and make sure that you're reporting on or linking the correct project to the correct project each year. What happens and what often happens is somebody refers to this project as the 2021 overlay and somebody else refers to it as the annual overlay project. And so instead what happens is they create two totally separate project entries for the exact same project. Now we have duplicate or erroneous reporting that causes issues. Project component is going to be whether it is, construction, pre-construction. You can have it be construction and pre-construction if you intend on funding both with RMRA. If you're not funding both with RMRA, only identify one. Project description, we have keywords and terminology boxes that you can just select and then add additional information if you need to for context. So again, for continuity purposes, to make it really streamlined across the board. Project location, we are not looking to have every single segment listed. What we do need for your project location is a general identifiable project location, work location that a member of the public could say, oh, I know where this project is, and I can go from here to here, and this is where it is. The who lives in your community. Saying work in maintenance zone 5 isn't going to work, right? The general public does not know that. Your U.S. congressional districts, legislative districts, you need to know those things. The reason why we have that in there and that you're reporting on that is because, especially in the last year and a half, the districts changed. We had our remapping done. So a lot of the legislative and congressional districts have changed. So you're going to need to go online and figure out, and make sure what your districts are. A lot of your individual websites may have that already, that information available. The other thing that you can do is go to the California legislature's website, look up Assembly, Senate, and congressional district, put in either your zip code or the city name, and it should all pop up. Useful life, additional elements, that's, technologies. And complete street components, things of that nature. Your project status, we went over the status terminology such as completed, in progress, carried over, etc. Project award schedule, completion schedule, you need to put that in there. The RMRA funds expended, if it's applicable. Future fiscal year RMRA funds for reimbursement, if applicable. Again, I caution this, steer away from this, from anything other than internal tracking. I really just don't recommend it in the system. It just causes a lot of complications. Estimated overall project cost, again, this is all funding sources, and then completed project outcomes, outputs, if you have a project that is to be reported as completed. And this, this kind of detail, it'll vary based on the status that you've identified. So now we will open it up to questions. Do we have any? All right, I'm going to take a minor break to get a little drink of water and take care of my throat for a second. Oh, we have some raised hands. Oh, apparently that was a mistake. Not a problem. So now we're going to jump into CalSmart. This is going to be a time right now where I encourage any of you who have access to CalSmart, or if you're getting ready and you haven't registered for CalSmart, go ahead and go to the link to the CalSmart website. There's calsmart.dot.ca.gov, right? Yeah. So calsmart.dot.ca.gov. Go to that website. If you're not already registered, I will walk you through the registration process. If you are already registered and you're trying to get in and you forgot your password and you have 2 failed login attempts, we're going to go over that too. Don't have a third. That will not work out well. So we're going to jump into CalSmart navigation. This is what you're going to see when you hit CalSmart and you get to the login page. It'll say, email or S number. We as employees between the California Transportation Commission, the Caltrans, we have what are called S numbers. These are our employee numbers. So just know that. And then just you would register under your email. And then there's the password. Should you forget your password, you can reset it by selecting forgot password. And you're going to go in there and reset it. If you have 2 failed attempts, go ahead and reset your password, hit forgot password and reset it, because if you hit a third, it's going to lock you out of the system. Once you're locked out of the system, we have no way of being notified that you've been locked out of the system other than you telling us. And that's going to cause a delay for you to have access. So we don't want to do that to you, right? We want you to have as much access as possible when you possibly can without delay, especially when things are getting down to the wire. Getting a hold of us can be very difficult. So to the CalSmart registration page, for those of you who are new and are just getting started here in our program, this is what you're going to see when you register. You're going to include your first name, your last name, your email, phone number, job title. Make sure that you are correctly selecting the agency that you represent. If you are a consultant who is reporting on behalf of multiple agencies, you are going to have to do one of 2 things. You're going to have to get an individual email for each of those agencies, and then create and register for that. Or you're going to email under one, have that agency send us the authorization that says you are allowed to report on their behalf and have access. And then every time you want to have access to the other agencies that you work on, you're going to have to follow that same exact process, requesting that we switch you to the other agency on the back end of the system. And then that agency is then going to have to send us a notification saying, yes, you are authorized to report on their behalf. It's not fun. It's pretty tedious. I think for all of us, if you can just have general emails that have been created for you on behalf of those agencies, and then you create accounts for each, it could work a lot easier. I recommend just use the same password for all of them. I didn't say that out loud, but I did. This is recorded. Sometimes I forget. One of the best things that I can say about this program is that one agency can have multiple users. That means that if there are 5 of you who are on this for one single agency, all 5 of you can individually register under your own individual email with your own individual password. You're never going to get locked out because somebody left. You're never not going to be able to access a report and pick up where the other person left off because now all of a sudden they're not here anymore and they took that knowledge with them. Nope. You will always have access and you can pick up and regain. The other thing is only select local streets and roads program to report on unless you know for certain that you deal with state of good repair grant. If you do the other SB1 programs, such as like active transportation, the local partnership program, solutions for congested corridor, like the majority of you do not. So therefore, there is truly no need for you to have an electronic project programming request. You don't need the other SB1 funded programs or state of good repair. If you try to select those other programs that are in there within the system for registration, it can cause you a lot of problems because you are going to get notifications for all these things that look exactly like what we're asking for, but it has nothing to do with this program. So just an FYI, we like to save you guys headaches. So moving on, when you register after you've selected your password and you've gone in and you hit register, you will get a registration email verification, and it's asking you account request email, and it's asking you to verify the email that you registered under and to click here. If you do not do that, and it'll come within a minute of you registering, if you do not do that, we will not receive the request on our end. Therefore, we cannot approve your registration. We can't approve your account, right? So the only way we can even receive your request is if you do that verification. Once we've received the request, we will verify and go in and give you authorization based on who you are and what your role is. And so we'll usually just assign that a role pretty simply. Just note right now, while we're doing this training, we're not going to be able to get in there and approve all of you. And if you are requesting, it'll come later after the training. So please be patient with us if that's the case. So now we're going to get into the CalSmart Live presentation. Are there any questions before I move on?
Okay, so there was a question regarding the schedule and the priority status. So someone entered in an example. So if design was done internally by city staff from March 2023 to September 2023, what would the status be for that? And then construction started in September and will be completed of December this year. So what would be their priority statuses? So design was done internally by city staff from March of 2023 to September of 2023. And then construction started in September and then will now be completed in December of 2023. So what would be the priority status for the design and then the construction?
So for design, it would be in progress, and construction would be carried over because construction didn't start until after the end of the fiscal year, right? So fiscal year ends June 30th of 2023 for this reporting period. You're doing the 22-23 report, correct? That's what we're in. We're in 22-23. Sorry, I'm on a lot of Dayquil, so sometimes a bit of a froggy mind. So yeah, so if your design was still ongoing, you started in March of 2023 and it did not end until September of 2023, that's considered an in-progress project that you report on. Again, only if you're using your RMRA funds. If you're not using your RMRA funds on that portion of the project, the pre-construction design build portion, you know, you're not going to be reporting on that part at all. You're only reporting on construction. And so, but for sake of the argument, if you are using your RMRA funds to pay for the staff who did that design work, you would call that part in progress, and you would report how much of RMRA funds were dedicated at that time and used at the time for the staff services for your own labor force, right, to conduct that type of work. And then for construction, you would just call it carried over. If you didn't have RMRA funds at all in that pre-construction phase, do not refer to it at all in the report, and you're only going to report on the construction piece, and you would call it carried over, very simply. I hope that answers that question. Do we have any more? Okay. So I'm going to get into a few things really quickly. So something before we get into CalSmart and navigating CalSmart all the way through as a part of our live presentation, I want to take you to the State Controller's Office website. And I'm just going to go back here, right? So the sco.ca.gov, right? This is our website that you want to go to. It's important that you all know of this website, its existence, where this information can be found. You're going to select on state and local. Then you're going to select local government. When you select local government, you're going to go to apportionments. Then we're going to scroll down until we find road maintenance and rehabilitation account. And I know a lot of people refer to this as SB1 or LSR funds, but it all comes from what is called the road maintenance and rehabilitation account funds that were established. And so revenues that are collected. And so this is exactly where you're going to find it. It's under RMRA, right? Road maintenance and rehabilitation account. Because the county's list is smaller, we're going to go to county. As you're going to see in here, all of your fiscal year funds that you've received are all in here. 23-24 is your current year that you're in, not the year that you're reporting on. You want to go to 22-23 because that is the fiscal year that you're going to report on. And as you're going to see in here, it says allocation year to date. Something else I want to talk about is that we have the remittance advice in here. For each month, it shows you exactly how much you money each month or was dispersed to you. If you go back into the earlier years of the program, like 18, 19, 19, 20, you're going to find letters that were all sent to all the financial departments from the State Controller's Office that specifically say the funds for this program that are dispersed are collected, July 1 to June 30th and disperse September to August of each year. That is them telling your financial department that even though they're receiving those funds in July and August each year, all the way into July and August, they are only to count as that fiscal year's fund as everything that they receive from September to August, right? I know it sounds confusing. It can get convoluted. If you need help, we are here to help you. But this, to me, I think is the easiest way to explain to your finance department. And for those on the finance team, this will help you as well. You're going to hit your year-to-date allocation information. And what you can see in here is that it says fiscal year 22-23, download a copy in order to edit and enable everything on the page. And then you're going to look in there. You have 21, starts September, right? So this is what I do. When you're getting ready to get into the system and start your report, you want to come in here first and foremost and say, okay, I know I need the following information. And it's actually going to go, because we ask for it in two parts, because this is where it helps us identify where errors in the accounting end sometimes are. So you want to highlight and track how much you received from September to June of the reporting year. So in this case, that's 1.8. I'm sorry, that's 18 million in that one. And then you're going to identify over here, July, August, your remaining 2 months. and that's another 3.8 million. Combine that together, that's going to be that total of the 21.8 million that was received in that fiscal year. That's your baseline of what you need to be showing that you have in there. That does not include interest, that does not include any remaining funds for the prior year, anything like that. So put that information down. Write it down based on September to June. This was your total. July and August, this was your total. And then your combined total is what? Put that down. Put it down on a piece of paper. Put it in an Excel spreadsheet. I don't care. But write it down, mark it down, because you're going to need it when you get into the system. The next thing I would recommend is, and we have links to everything to where you can go and either pull from your resolution from the prior year to find out what the estimate was at the time that you built out your project list for that reporting year, or you can go on to the local government annual California Finance Almanac page, California City Finance page, and look up the estimates in the reporting year. You can find it two ways. So now let's go ahead and jump in to doing our live. So I'm going to log out. This page isn't working. Reload. There we go. Okay, so this is our test site. Don't worry. It should, for the most part, look like what you guys are going to see on your end. But again, this is just our test site. So I'm going to log in. I am pretending that I am the city of Torrance. Once I have logged in, I need to go and identify what my current program is. I'm selecting local streets and roads program. Great. Now I'm going to scroll down here, and this is what's called my dashboard. Something I want all of you to remember that you have is this wonderful help and resources tab. When you select on your help and resources tab, you're going to see in there that we put a copy of the expenditure report training is in there for the handouts, a spreadsheet for outputs, outcomes, assistance to help you track and see what you're doing when you have a completed project. And then also our CalSmart expenditure report quick guide. Cannot recommend that quick guide enough. It will help you navigate through mistakes maybe that you make, the how to combine projects, relist, link, things of that nature. So it's really important that you utilize the tools that we've made available to you within the system. So I'm going to come back to my dashboard. And what I see here is it says that the expenditure reporting period is now open. And so I'm like, oh, that's great. But before I get ready to start anything in regards to my expenditure report, I say, Alicia said that I need to prepare for my report. That means I'm going to go to my fiscal year page, and I'm going to hit submittal page, and I'm going to hit view proposed projects. And when I do that, I'm going to come down to the 22-23 proposed project list, because that's the fiscal year expenditure report that I'm doing. And I want the proposed project list from that year. And I'm going to hit apply. And then once I hit apply, I'm going to go all the way down here, and I'm going to select export list to Excel. This is going to pull all of the information that you proposed in the project list for that fiscal year. All that information is going to fill into an export in an Excel format. So then once you have that, you want to go to your reporting thing, or the reporting tab within the dashboard. Before you get into create or manage, you want to go to view expenditure report projects. And again, everything's going to be City of Torrance, so that's fine because it's my agency. I want to go to the fiscal year 21-22 expenditure report because that's the most recent expenditure report that had been submitted from me, or doing the 22-23. Once I've applied, hit that, I'm going to go to export list to Excel. Then I'll, on my own, after I have everything in my Excel document, I'm going to combine the two lists, and I'm going to note what showed up on my proposed list, what showed up on my expenditure report list, and I'll pair those up. I'm going to look and then see what my statuses are, what needs to be updated. Can I add in that we've spent money? And I'm going to document all of that within these Excel spreadsheets because it's really important. There's that page in the PowerPoint that I showed you guys that said, hey, you have a list of things that you want to make sure that you're looking at and that you're pulling from, because this is what potentially everything that you're going to report on. This is it. So you have access to this. You can create your own based off of the list that you export out and then combine and then customize your headers to be exactly like this. There's lots that you can do to really help you prepare to get ready to do this report. But if you go in without any of this information collected and readily available to you to where like you can copy paste and put information in that you've already combined them so you know what you need to be combining together, linking as the projects may be, and their statuses. If you haven't done all of that ahead of time, I can promise you, you will be at some point frantically getting a hold of us saying, I have errors I can't figure out. I closed out of something prematurely. Now I can't find it. I inputted the wrong information, but I can't figure out where I inputted the wrong information. So now we have to scrub through like all 15 projects that you're reporting on. So to avoid that mess, I cannot stress enough, prepare. And those things that I just showed you about downloading those Excels from your 22, 23 proposed project list, and then your 21, 22 expenditure report, and then use these things as your headers to fill in those fields for those projects. It's really imperative. It will help you be successful. So now back to my live presentation. So let's say now I've done all of that. I've already gathered and gained all that information. Now I want to go back and start my report. How am I going to start my report? I'm going to select create expenditure report because I'm creating a new one for the new year for that 22-23 fiscal year. So as you see, there are some fields in here that are just automatically going to be inputted. They've been carried over. It's already been entered into the system, and they are going to stay within the system the whole time. Things that can be changed: the agency address, location, agency contact information, agency contact title for that person, phone number, email, all of that can all be changed. I recommend making sure that whoever it is the accurate person to have on there. They are the one with the greatest knowledge base, who is going to be most responsive or ensure that the report is submitted. Listen, guys, we have 100% eligibility compliance, but more than that, we have 100% expenditure reporting compliance. That means that both transparency and accountability are at utmost priority of this program. And we ensure that the public is going to find out what is being done with these funds, right? And that you guys all have nothing to hide and you're willing and happy to report out on this information. It's readily available. And that's really important. It's important to the credibility of the program. It's important for us as a way to run the program with integrity year after year. So, just kudos to all of you, and let's just keep that up. And we will continue to work with each and every one of you step by step as you go through to ensure that you're reporting accurately. So next step, as you go through, you've updated your contact information as you've needed to. And what you see here is the fiscal year 22-23 information. This is where you're going to start putting in money. And this is going to ask you for the original RMRA estimate. And so as the city of Torrance, I know, and I've already gone through and I've documented that my original estimate was 3 million, a little over 3 million, right? Okay, I don't know why it's not. Oh, it's my screen is so little I couldn't see what was putting in there. Sorry, guys. Now I'm going to go to my armory apportionment amount. Remember how I said it's going to ask you September to June how much you received. So that's why I said you really want to break that down. You want to make sure that you're writing it down. So I'm going to enter in that amount. Why is it causing me issues? We did not have this problem in the earlier version. There we go. And then we've got the July to August portion. And then if I had any interest, right? Was there any interest that it was accrued? So this interest can be a number of, is this the interest on the amount that you received in that year? If if your finance department said, yeah, we accrued interest in the current fiscal year of this amount, this is where you can enter it in. Right here, if it's based off of the amount that you just received, or if they're basing it off of the amount from the prior year, you would put it down below in the next field. So let's just say for fun, we're going to put in 1,000 as interest. And again, if you're counting it and you've combined it off the two, that's fine too. Not a big deal. We just need to make sure that any interest that is accrued per the program per the fund has been accounted for. So as you can see, that the way it starts is that the amount per interest is different than the amount without interest. So without interest, with interest is going to be one thing on that top field, right? Down below, your remaining balance was 6.3 million. We're going to say no interest, but we know that there's probably interest, but no interest for the sake of this training. No interest accrued, so it's going to show us with interest. That's the balance at 6.3. So that's just the remaining fund, right? Now in the next two columns or boxes, you're going to see what it is as combined available RMRA fiscal year without interest is just shy of $1 billion. And at 9.649, and then the other one with the interest is 9.650, right? So that's your money that you have to work with. Some people are always very like, how does everything get tracked? How do you know what's remaining from year to year? Who rolls that over? The system's automatically rolling it over. You don't get a choice of where that money goes. If you don't use it in a single year, it sticks with you and it still has to be used per the statute, per the guidelines, right? For those intended purposes. So then we're going to come out here to the expended in the reporting year amount, the accrued armory costs that were expended. Again, this is based on invoiceable work, right? So for the purposes of this, we're going to say, let's just say 3 million. So we've got 3 million. 3 million was spent in the current reporting year. If you hit that plus button, it's going to add a future fiscal year. So that means like you advance to future fiscal years of fund and you're borrowing against that future year, right? You'll reimburse it later. We have to have that in there because it's required per statute because you're allowed to do such a thing. For the reporting purposes, what I have found is that it just causes a lot of issues and it can become very convoluted. So I don't recommend doing it. So now once you do that, you're going to see that this section here, the total RMRA, it is going to show you, I don't know if it highlights what you can see on my end, but that total RMRA expenditure, July to June, That's showing you what you put in. So everything that you enter in per project that you say that you spent from here on out in the system for the individual projects, it cannot be more or less than that $3 million threshold. Okay. If you do anything else in there, it's going to show you an error. Only if you have an 80 or above are you required to report your PCI. But if you have your recently measured PCI, definitely recommend inputting it in here. Right. You are not required to upload any files, but if you would like to, you can. If it's, let's say that your individual authority takes action to amend your proposed project list and you have some changes to that from that fiscal year and you want to upload the amended list, you can definitely do that here. That's fine. If you want to upload project photos, you can do that here as well. If you want to upload a document of invoices, nothing against you doing it. You're just not required to. But what you are required to do is provide your summary of your fiscal year RMRA activity. And so that's where you're going to see, this is where it's really pivotal that you provide, or very vital that you provide the information that tells us what you did in the year or did not do. If you did not spend money, why did you not spend money? Did you hold out an open bid, but you didn't get responsive bidders? So you couldn't award the contract. In years past, it's because there weren't enough contractors to perform the work. And then it became the cost of the work was 3 times the estimated amount cost of work that had been budgeted, right? So then you couldn't afford to do as much work, or you were spending more and getting less out of it. So there's a lot of reasons for that, but putting that in the summary is really important because this helps us tell that narrative. So now you're going to hit save and continue. Now, when you hit save and continue, what is going to happen is you're going to come straight here to project reporting. And what I want to address right here, if you had a completed project in a prior year and you needed to add in that additional funds were spent, you will drop down that list and you'll update, you'll report. If you do not need to report that additional funds were spent on a completed project, minimize that field, skip it, do not report in that section. We get a lot of erroneous reporting on completed projects that were completed in a prior year, but for some reason, like 2-3 years later, you guys are still reporting on them, even though no additional funds were spent. Please stop. It is not necessary. Skip it if you did not spend any additional funds. Then the next thing you're going to come to is whatever project was remaining on your expenditure report list from that prior year. So that means anything that was in progress, carried over, or forecasted is going to show up as still something that needs to be reported on, right? So we're going to come here and we're going to select update. What you're going to see here, and this is probably one of my more favorite things that we see that the system has, is that it gives you a little summary of what's on there, of what the project is, so that you don't forget what it was that you selected, right? So the project title of what you selected is already there for update, a brief project description, and the component that had been selected. That's all identified already. That's really important because it's easy to lose track. And then you're going to come down to your proposed project list and say, is there a project in here that is the same, right? Is there anything that's linked to this? Are any of these the same projects? Well, if there was, even though there isn't, so if the project that showed up on your 21-22 expenditure report also showed up on your 22-23 proposed project list, you would select that project and then you would hit the link button and it would merge the two projects details and you would update it all in one, creating one record instead of having 2 records in multiple spots, right? Now you just have one cohesive record that you're going to be reporting on, if that's the case. If you're not linking the projects, you're not merging the projects for whatever reason, because it doesn't need to be, you hit skip linking, proposed project. And you're going to come in here. And we're reporting on pre-construction and construction. So you want to make sure, because both things were identified, you want to make sure that everything in here is both pre-construction and construction that's been identified. So we're doing right of way, we're doing there's document preparation. I'm just going to say, you know what, there was also preliminary design, and project scope development. So I'm going to just add that in there. We messed up and we forgot to put that in there. So I'm just going to add that in because we kind of messed up last year. So not a problem. A portion of this was clearly completed because the additional information is telling me that. I'm going to presume that it's the pre-construction component that was previously completed. And how will I know that for sure? It's going to tell me my pre-construction was completed. So it was first done and in progress reported on in 2021. The pre-construction was completed in 21-22, and I carried it over for construction in 21-22. So now I'm going to select save and continue. I don't have anything on the completed portion for pre-construction to include, so I'm just going to skip all of that because nothing needs to be added. Or I could add it if I wanted to, and let's just say that there was additional funds that were spent in closeout. So let's just say that additional funds were spent in closeout, and I'm going to say $1 million in closeout were spent. Now, my total project cost and my RMRA amount cannot be different. So we're going to say we paid for all of the pre-construction stuff, just an RMRA, and that was $1 million. Now we're going to hit save and continue. Now it's telling me that something is wrong. So let's look. Oh, look at that. It's still too much. 1.106,000 is what I said that I spent in RMRA, and so I can't just have 1 million as the total project cost because that's less than what I even said I spent in RMRA. So the system is going to tell me that I made an error, that there's an issue. Now I've corrected it, save and continue, and now I'm able to go on. So we have a lot of checks and balances worked within the system. So now it's got me to the construction component. I previously had it as carried over. Now I'm going to call it as in progress. And I'm going to say I spent another $1 million on the construction component of this project. I'm going to say that the project started. You'll see that the system doesn't go past June of 2023 for a start date because none of your projects could have started after that. So I'm going to say that this project started March 1 of 2023. And its estimated completion is still going to be November 2nd of 2024. The estimated total project cost for this is going to be $3 million. Now I can add in any additional information that I want. If there was a delay, if we expect that it's going to be done early, if my original date now has changed from 2024, right? November 2nd, 2024 is no longer what I'm saying is going to be the estimated completion date. I can now make it, it's been pushed out to February of 2025. It's more complicated. There was additional storm damage, whatever. And I can actually say, like, we had to push this delivery of this project out by an extra like 5 or 6 months due to the storm damage that occurred in the 21-22 or 22-23 fiscal year, right? So we could say storm damage delays for project delivery. Yeah, you can put that in there. Again, adding a narrative into these projects and the information is really important because it helps us tell the story for you if we are to get any questions. If there's anything that we can't answer based on what you've provided, we definitely direct everything back to you guys for that. So the next thing we have are the city sidewalks, 37th Street sidewalks project, right? So every time you hit save and continue, it's going to take you back to the project reporting page, and that's going to have anything that's still on the list. It's all going to show up there for you to select. So for this one, we're going to say, yep, not a problem. 37th Street sidewalks, got it. I could either split this project, I can identify it as no longer Armory funded, or I can report on it directly. Let's say I ended up by having this whole thing delivered under one contract in the 37th Street sidewalks project, and the 2023 rehab and pavement project ended up by being all done under a single contract instead. And it was whatever for the year. I can actually do what's called consolidate a project. What will happen is everything kind of gets renamed. Information gets combined and all put together into one, and then you're going to identify what needs to stay, what needs to go, and customize it to fit the project specifically. And then our system internally is going to track that these were two projects that were consolidated, combined for reporting purposes. I can show you what that looks like. So we're going to hit consolidate. As you see, the project title doesn't stay, the project type gets changed, and all of this kind of gets reset, right? But I'm going to go here, I'm going to select construction. And because one of the projects was already construction, because one of the things is only in there for construction, what we can do is the other portion was more of like their own labor forces. They were going to purchase signals and install, right? And so we can add in there the section for lighting and street signals and things of that nature. And so all of that can be added in. So traffic signals, lights, signage, new or existing, and we can add all of that in and combine it into one. And then we can update all of the other information as needed. Or let's say it's all being done with our own labor force. It's not an individual contract. And so we're going to put everything under procurement operational needs. And then we'll identify that, that includes the public works equipment, materials, the staffing, and then the, other or additional information, we're going to add in additional detail, right? And then let's just say I made a mistake. And as you see in there, location and all of that still is entered into the system. And so it stays there. So let's just say I made a mistake. I can hit cancel. It says data entered in on this page will not be saved. I'll say okay. And now it's taking me back to my manage expenditure report field. And then I would hit project reporting, and it'll take me back to where I was, and there's been no change and no issues. Are there any questions before I keep going? We're almost done with the reporting piece on CalSmart for the live demonstration, and then we'll go straight into Q&A. All right, so let's just direct report on these, okay? And if anybody is confused about how that happened, when I hit cancel, it took me to my manage page. And so just to show you what that looks like, manage expenditure reports. You see here, my report I created is still there. It's got the little yellow triangle and it's kind of grayed out. So I know that that's the one I'm on and I've selected. So I'm going to come down to the bottom window where it says project reporting, and that's what I'll select. And that'll take me back to that list that's already built into the system that I can continue to report on. So back to it, I'm going to select that 37th Street, and I'm just going to direct report on that. And I have my ADA curb ramps for the 37th Street sidewalks. There's ADA curb ramp repair. If it's a sidewalk repair or it's called the sidewalk project, I would hope, yeah, we have sidewalks identified. You would be surprised how many times that does not happen. I need to add in my congressional district, so let's go ahead and add that in there. And then 37th Street. Well, let's say 37th Street's really long. We've identified now exactly what parts of 37th Street, and it's from Howard to Burns, right? That's what we're going to call it. So from Howard's to Burns, and so that gives more of a specific idea of where exactly on 37th Street the sidewalks and all of this work was done to be prepared. Because it's sidewalk work, we're definitely going to say it's complete streets components, right? That's an added element that is in there, and so we want to identify that and take that opportunity to identify it. Now we're going to hit save and continue. This is what takes us to our project status and expenditure page. This is where you're going to put in your schedule. This is where you're going to put in your costs. All of that information is going to come in here. So for priority status, we're going to call this one in progress. Let's see, I've done $1 million on all my other projects that I've spent money on. So let's just make it nice and simple and clean. And I'm going to report that I've spent another $1 million so far. I'm really good at spending money, apparently. So I'm saying, here's another $1 million, because here's the thing. At that very first page on intake, I said I spent $3 million in RMRA funds. I want to make sure that I've been tracking as I'm inputting in there, that I'm putting in the correct amounts and how far in I am on that. Because by the time I'm done with this list, if I put in an extra 50 million in there, or an extra 50,000, I mean, in there, or 500,000, or I'm shy even 1,000, the system's going to block it and cause an error. And we don't want that. We don't want to deal with that. We want to make sure that it's as accurate as possible for as long as we can. Let's just say we got a short sort of jump on this because there were some late rains, whatever. We didn't even start this until May 11th of 2023. So it's not quite done yet. Or it wasn't done prior to the end of the reporting period. And let's just say it was going to end August 1st, 2023. We know August 1st, 2023 is already finished. It's been done. You are going to be tempted to select completed, but because that did not happen within the actual reporting year, it still has to be in progress. I know that that's annoying. I know that that's really tough, but it's true. And that happens. So let's just say this project is a $2 million project. We spent $1 million so far in RMRA funds. And in here, I want to put in there that this project completed in August 2023 and will be closed out in the following, there you go, following expenditure report submitted with any additional funds. That is going to be a note for you and a note for whoever else is reporting, and then also a note to us that that's what we can expect in the next year. So now I'm going to hit save and continue. Then we're going to come to this. All right. I really want to show you what it's going to look like if you do a no longer RMRA funded project. But I also want to show you what it would look like if you had a completed project. And I ran out of projects. I did not gauge this correctly. But I can show you what completed projects look like first. So let me undo that. So that 37th Street project that we already reported on, a portion of that had been completed. And I just want to show you what it looks like on the outputs outcomes page for a completed project. Oh, it won't let me show you. It won't let me show you because it's already been completed. Never mind. Way of doing this because I can redo it. So just for fun, we're going to say this is a no longer RMRA funded project. And what does that mean? It's a no longer RMRA funded project. That means that you're no longer using RMRA funds to deliver the project. A greater priority has been identified for the project, or there's a higher priority, so you have to scrap this until funds can become available and you don't know when that's going to be, whatever the case may be. So hit save and continue, get to the project status. Priority status says no longer RMRA funded. The only thing that you have in here is to do additional information. For the sake of this training, we are going to say other funding sources were secured and deemed a while other projects have now been prioritized for RMRA, right? And so that could be what you enter in there, right? And so then you would hit save and continue. And so those are all of the projects that you would be reporting on. So now you're going to go to reporting. Even if you hit create expenditure report, the system is set up so that you cannot create a secondary expenditure report. It would just take you to what is the manage expenditure report page, which is this right here. If you needed to add a new project that had additional funds being spent on it or was active in the fiscal year, you would simply go to that bottom right corner. I'll go back to it again. The bottom right corner says add new project. You would select on that. And then everything would come up that you would normally input in to create a new project and include additional information that is needed. If you are unsure if you've reported on all your projects and you know that you needed to double check something, you could go into project reporting and you're going to see in there that everything's been either linked or reported on. And so you are fine to go. You know, there's no additional proposed projects or reported on projects that need to be accounted for at this time. You can create a PDF that would just give you a quick printout of some of the basic information that you inputted into the system. To double check that you're good to go to submit, you want to see up here, we said that we spent $3 million in RMRA funds. Now I want to look down at my project detail that is here, and I want to see $3 million in RMRA funds total in this. And that's what I see. That's good. We like that. So now I'm going to say, okay, I want to hit submit. And here I have my submit and we are good to go, right? Not a problem. I'm sure I want to submit If there is an issue, you would get a notice that says it cannot be submitted because there was an error. If there's no error, you get this blue little clock that shows that we currently have it for review. So that is what it looks like on your end when you're submitting things to us, right? When you're creating your system. While for me and the rest of the local streets and roads program staff, on our end, we go into manage expenditure reports. It's going to take a second because everything's in there. Let's carry it over. Let's go from last year. Here we go. Let's see, do I have any completed ones on here? Okay. So, and I just wanted to show you what it looks like for us when we go to look at what you've done, right? So something's submitted in and collapses, and we're looking at your information. We're going to look to see your armory activity, your completed Pine Grove. You know, this is what they said is what happened in the fiscal year, and this is where they're at. So it kind of gives us a brief little scenario of what's going on, which is great. If there's more information that I want to look at, I just have to hit more. Because let's say I'm curious, like, are they reporting any interest? If they're not reporting any interest, what's going on? Where are we at? What's happening, right? If they didn't have any funds left over in a prior year, that bottom part's going to be empty because they used all their funds from a prior year. And then we have all of the information in there. And that's what that looks like for us, okay? And that's what we're going to look at as we're reviewing. When I look at a completed project, I'm going to hit that eyeball. That's how you open up your projects, right? You're going to enter or select the eyeball. I want to look at the status. I'm going to hit edit, or not edit, but I'm going to select view. And that's where you see when you have a completed project, the completed project is going to include all of this information. You're going to have your completed project details that you identify. You've got to select the related field, and that's what you're going to input. That's the outcomes and outputs section of the report. And so that's really vital. And I just want to make sure that you remember that on our dashboard, we have that helpful resources or help and resources tab where you can actually look at the outputs and outcomes assistance information. And it's an Excel spreadsheet, and you can open up the file and use that to help fill in your report and information as you're gathering it, right? And as you're building everything out. This is why I always say preparation is key when it comes to these reports. It's really, really imperative. Okay. All right. So there's that. And now we will get back to the presentation unless there are any questions first. All right, we've got some questions.
All right, the first question, can you please explain again why we pulled the 21-22 expenditure report when we were preparing?
That is a great question. And I'm hoping that you kind of saw in the samples that we did, or the sample that I did, that the reason why you're pulling your 21-22 is that the system automatically, if you had any projects that were reported on in the prior year, whether they were completed, in progress, carried over, or forecasted, they are still carried into the next reporting period for you to report on. So the reason why we say export that out and track that information is so that you know exactly what projects it is that you are expected to be reporting on. You can gather the necessary information and get ready to report on that once you start inputting everything into the system. You're not going back and forth. And if you have any additional questions, please let me know if that didn't help clarify. Anybody else? Okay. So we'll go back to our lovely PowerPoint. If I can get it to go. All right, so now we're just going to go to our frequently asked questions. And a lot of this is going to be repetitive. But the reason why it's repetitive is because it's vital. We wouldn't keep including the exact same information on multiple slides if these were not the most common issues that come across our table when we're reviewing. So people always ask, no RMRA funds were spent in the reporting fiscal year. Do we still need to submit an expenditure report, regardless as to how much you spent? Whether it was zero or all of it, you have to give a bare minimum an update on the projects that you proposed, the prior projects that were reported on and had not been completed yet, right? You've got to give us a status update at a bare minimum, because the public deserves to know what's happening in limbo with these projects. Why haven't they happened? Something that we fully expect to see, and it'll kind of get touched on in one of our other slides, is the emergency repairs, right? Storm disaster relief, federal relief, that kind of stuff for state of repair or emergency repair situations due to the floods. We fully anticipate to see a big issue with that, like we saw in years past with the fires when those were occurring, or mudslides when that was happening a lot. Not like it didn't happen again last year with the floods in addition to that. So we're going to touch on these types of things where for some places that meant that they didn't get to spend any of their money because they were so busy doing all the emergency stuff and the emergency funds that were coming through. Other places, they had to use all their RMRA just to be able to get the work done while they waited for emergency funds, but none of their project list projects were able to get done, right? So like, you've got to tell us that story. You're providing all these updates. That still needs to be included. What are we reporting on if no RMRA funds were spent? Again, it's you're telling us how much you received from the state controller's office. You're telling us how much interest you accrued. All that interest that you accrue has to be when it's used, and it does need to get used. When it's used, it needs to be used in accordance with statute and the guidelines. You're updating schedules, you're updating locations, scope of work, all of that. What if a project is listed in both the prior fiscal year and the reporting fiscal year project list? This is where you're going to link your projects up, right? This is why we say link it, create one singular record instead of multiple records across both years. This will help condense your reporting efforts all together and streamline your effort. Will we have to link projects in the reporting cycles? Long story short, yeah, more than likely, this is always going to be a thing. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that there's a lot of carryover. There's a lot of re-proposing of prior projects. The other aspect of this is because in the first 2-3 cycles of the project of the program, we were getting 5 and 10 year management plans, capital improvement plans as the individual projects by segment, right? So in some instances, we were getting like 50 projects from one jurisdiction. In other instances, it was like 300 plus. And so, not everything could be consolidated, not everything could be condensed. And as time has gone on, the linking of the projects has had to occur. So in that way, they could be tracked. If a specific segment from a prior year had then been absorbed into another project, absorbed into a new scope of work on another project that's being reported on, you could do that. It's all getting absorbed. The records are being linked. So even if the general public ends up by having a question, we can go back into the system and say, yep, nope, this was all merged together and it should have been delivered under the same project. It's up to you to just make sure that location information and what happened is adequately described within that project detail that's provided. Why are we being asked to record the interest? Again, I've already said it. The interest accrued must be spent as intended by statute. This interest is a direct result of the funding that you are receiving from this program, and therefore it belongs to the program and needs to be used in accordance. How do you want us to report interest that was accrued in previous fiscal years but wasn't reported? We've created fields for this to allow you to do so. So I'm not even going to get into that, but you can definitely read it. How do I continue project reporting if I exit CalSmart? And I showed you this. You're going to go to your manage page on the dashboard for manage expenditure reporting. Then you'll select project reporting within that window on the one that's still identified with like the little yellow triangle. And then you can go and continuously select on the projects that you still need to report on. Or add new projects if needed. This is very specific to your finance team. And so I strongly encourage that your finance teams be a part of these conversations, or that you have them watch the videos for this or watch the training in some aspect. If you keep your HUDA and your RMRA funds in the same account, how are we supposed to separate the interest? The SCO in here, State Controller's Office, actually lays out the process and what should be done in order to break down your interest. And you know, how that really should be done. Should you need further guidance on the matter, I strongly encourage you to contact the State Controller's Office. Continue on to our resources page at the end of the frequently asked questions section, and you will actually see an email and telephone number that you can use to contact their audits division to have that clarity provided to you. A project was reported as in progress in the prior fiscal year and has since been completed. Can I report on that, or do I need to create a new project? I would love to say that this is such an uncommon question, but it's not. It is still a very common question that we get. We included linking for a reason, the ability to link in the system for a reason, and this is exactly it. You had a project that started being reported on in the prior fiscal year, was proposed in the current reporting fiscal year, and now you need to update it and say what's going on. So this is where you're going to link it, okay? What can be updated for a project reported as in progress last year? Almost all of your information can be updated. The only things that really can't be changed is the start date and anything that you used to report as the amount of funds being spent. Your component also can't be changed. Our finance department says the payments received in July and August can't be counted towards the reporting fiscal year because they were received outside of the fiscal year. This is on here for like the 4th time because, again, it's a regular issue. So if they have that question, show them this page, let them know. If they say that, say, nope, we've been told by the CTC, nope, it needs to be accounted towards the reporting fiscal year. There's information on the state controller's website that says that they are required to attribute it towards that fiscal year too. Is there anything that can't be changed for a project that has been reported as complete? We identify everything that you should not change because really all of it's really grayed out and locked in anyways. The only thing that you're going to identify is any additional RMRA funds that were spent. You can update that, and then you can also update the total project cost. And that's it. That's all that you can change once a project was already reported as completed in a prior year. A project was delivered using RMRA funds. So this is the one that I think we're going to have a big issue with this year. And so I hope the 170 plus of you that are still on this are really listening to me. With all the floods, with everything that happened in this past year, a lot of you are going to be using, emergency relief funds, state of emergency funds, federal, state, federal funds for repair, grants, all of that kind of stuff for the catastrophic flooding that we all went through. Do not, under any circumstances, if that funding source that you're going for, if you're waiting to get it approved, if you're applying for the grants, if you're waiting to get reimbursed, and your reimbursement amount is like, 75% of the total project cost is what's eligible to be reimbursed, Do not report that you spent more than 25% of your RMRA on that total project cost. If you can be reimbursed up to 75%. Because then what happens is the 6 months to a year that it may take you to get reimbursed and to finally get all that money, you may end up by saying, oh, we said that we reported that we spent like 75% of our RMRA for the total project cost on this emergency repair project. And, instead what happened is we got 75% of it reimbursed and we only spent 25%. We cannot go back and change what you said you've already spent in the following year. You can always add to it, but you cannot take it back. So I cannot urge you enough that whatever your reimbursement ratio is for whatever funding source that you're seeking, especially for these emergency relief, disaster relief type of projects that you have to do, repair projects that you had to make, do not report that you spent more than what your reimbursement amount is, right? Whatever that base is, don't do it, because that causes a lot of problems down the road, and we don't want that type of inaccuracy out there, right? Because you are getting reimbursed. You can say that you fronted the project using your RMRA funds until it gets reimbursed. But those RMRA funds do need to, if you get reimbursed, those RMRA funds have to come back into that RMRA account internally. They don't get to just float around. If future fiscal year RMRA apportionments have been dedicated. We have this in there because it has to be in there. It will indicate that the jurisdiction has that you've advanced a project. If you include that in there, you advanced a project using future fiscal year funds that you intend to reimburse, right? That you intend to utilize later and reimburse that other account. The problem that happens that we've seen multiple times is that someone says, oh yeah, we fronted this project, we advanced this project with future fiscal year funds. And when those future fiscal year funds come in, they're like, oh, never mind, we decided we're not really putting that much into that project. We're really putting it over here, right? We have another funding source that we're going to use over here instead. It can just become very complicated. It can cause you issues within the reporting system. It can get very confusing for the people who, from year to year, especially if the hands change of who's reporting, it can cause a lot of confusion. And I just, yeah, you can do it internally. You can track it. I just urge you to kind of think twice about putting it into your report that's in CalSmart, because it just doesn't act friendly towards it. Where can I find my fiscal year RMRA account received amounts? I already showed you that, but this will actually take you directly to those links. This kind of gives you a little how-to guide to get to it. I mentioned the California City Finance website through the California Local Government Finance Almanac, and how to find your estimates. This will take you directly to that. There's your screenshots. Here are all your helpful resources, links, tabs, streets and highways code section, state controller's office, our program site, our office site, and CalSmart. And then we also have the Division of Audits resources for you, as well as the Division of Apportionments with the State Controller's Office, California State Association of Counties, who are our big partners here, League of California Cities, who have been vital to the program, as well as, again, the California Local Government Finance Almanac link is in there too. And if you have any questions, we're here to answer them. If not, you've gained 20 minutes back in your day. All right, looks like we have a question.
Someone asked, how are the inflation costs accounted for in reporting?
Exactly what do you mean? Because inflation costs are going to impact you as the one purchasing product, labor force costs, materials, the contracts that you're doing. That's your inflation costs, right? And so that kind of comes to, you're paying for more, or you're paying more in order to get less, right? So you could say, due to cost of inflation, we may have spent more than what we normally spend on a project half the size that we would normally be able to deliver, and it's because of inflation, right? And so in that way, yes, but there's no way for us to include we are not a finance report. We are a project report that shows a portion of your finance, which is specific to a particular account, right? Which is, we want to know, what did this money get the state of California? This particular money that was given to you got the state of California and your constituency what? And that's what this project list is telling us. And that's what this expenditure report is telling us. I hope that answers your question. Anybody else?
We do have another question. Is it okay to use RMRA funds for emergency repairs that will later be reimbursed by a grant if we are recording a receivable and later reimburse RMRA?
Yes, you definitely can. And so we actually touched on this in our slides about the reimbursement ratio, right? Here we go. For emergency repairs due to fire or flood, how can we reflect that? Jurisdictions are strongly encouraged to reach out to us so that we can help you on a case-by-case basis. The standard reimbursement ratio is usually like 75% of the total cost is reimbursable, right? Depending on what grant you're going for. And so it can be anywhere from like 75% to 50%, and on very rare occasions, it would ever be 100%. But so let's just say 75% is the most average. We would say to you, if you did that and you did emergency repairs, do not say that you spent more than 25% of RMRA funds if that's what you used. But truly work with your finance department, because they will code it a specific way if they're expecting to get reimbursement. And so and they know what that reimbursement ratio is as well. So work with them, talk to us, and we'll work with you on what would be the most reasonable amount to say that you spent in RMRA funds. And then in the following year, after you've been reimbursed your amount, if you ended up by spending more in RMRA, you would add that additional amount in there. If you didn't, and that 25% is it, then it's closed out, you're done. Okay. Okay. So just remember, your scope changes, because we got another question. So your scope changes, let's say, because cost estimates are coming in 5 times higher than what your original estimates were, again, because of cost of inflation, right? Material costs have gone up, the cost of labor have gone up, the access to labor has like diminished so much that you're waiting in a queue for 5 different contractors that are spread thin throughout the state with limited labor force. So does your scope sometimes have to shrink in order to get a portion, the most critical portion of your project done? If so, then I guess so, but that's a determination that has to be made on you as the agency, as the Public Works Department with your finance team. It is not something that we here at the commission have any authority on saying, right? You don't come to us for scope approval changes. You don't come to us for design approval changes. You document your changes, you give us the narrative, you show us what changed, and then you report out on what did or did not happen based on what you received and what was available to you. But we're not the ones sitting here approving or denying those things. We're not the ones authorizing the scope changes or anything of that nature. And so I really do hope that helps to clarify some things. All right. So if that is it, and there are no more questions, and if you didn't feel like asking a question right now, just know that you could always ask a question later by sending something to the local streets and roads website or email box. It's right here on your screen. I'm going to go ahead and pause the screen for the next 5 minutes, and then we will be shutting down. Please enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we're here if you need us for technical assistance. Okay, guys? Thank you.